Hi, I'm Phil Constantine, and on this episode of Travels with Phil, we're going on the road with the CHP, or the Highway Patrol. I was a Highway Patrol officer for 20 years, and not only do I do videos about places to go and see all over the country, and Canada and Mexico too, for that consideration, I'm going to talk to you about some things that happen on the roads while you're traveling or related to being a law enforcement officer. Now, what is it with officers, law enforcement officers, deputies, marshals, etc., with donut shops? Well, if you were to do a word association test with a comedian, the odds are pretty good that if you gave them the word cop, the first thing they would say would be donut. So what is it about cops and donut shops? Why do officers seem to hang out there? What makes them so attractive? Is it the donuts? Is it the coffee? Well, in many cases, it's neither. Officers often spend more time writing reports than they do actually catching criminals. Now, the proper documentation of their efforts is required for the prosecution of these crooks. And this is to ensure that stolen property gets returned and that they even get prosecuted at all. So you have to do the reports and you have to do them properly. However, criminals seldom stop their dirty deeds while officers are writing up the last exploits of the last ones they caught that day. So remaining close to the action is always important for officers to consider. So with all this writing to be done and the need to be close at hand if they are needed, where can an officer go to write? Restaurants have nice tables, but the lighting is not always that good. Now, in this circumstance, you can see the glare off my head, so I've got pretty good lighting right here in my production area. But a restaurant, not necessarily the case. In a lot of cases, especially in the evenings, they want to have lower lights so you can have that sort of romantic ambiance. So, Now, here's another thing. Have you ever tried to get a server to get your bill if you're in a hurry to leave? Well, officers are constantly in a hurry to leave because that call comes in and says you got to go be somewhere immediately. And it's not always that easy to do. Also, there's only so many tables in a restaurant. And it's not really fair to the restaurant business-wise to have an officer take up an entire table and maybe only drinking a cup of coffee. That's not a lot of good bang for their buck as far as that's concerned. Now, restaurants also have booths. Now, for a lot of people, getting into a booth, you sort of have to turn sideways, and some of them, particularly the lower end ones, they're pretty tight because they're trying to get as many booths in there as they can. Well, even the officer in the best shape has got lots and lots of stuff on their belt. I mean, this is going to put Batman to shame with the utility belt of all the stuff that officers have around their waist. And there's other things. Officers also like to have an immediate freedom of movement. If you ever try to get out of a booth in a hurry, you got to slide sideways. Yep, that's not going to happen. So if some emergency came up inside the restaurant or the officer had to leave very, very quickly, it's not always the quickest thing to do to get out of a booth. And then the final thing that's a problem for restaurants is the radios. Now, you may have some officers who have a little thing they can plug in their ear, but most of them have the little thing they clip onto their shoulder or the handheld radio that they'll stick on the desk. And if they've got it turned up loud enough that they can hear a call as it comes out, this is going to disturb the other people in the restaurants. In public dining places, people have a tendency to interact with law enforcement officers. While most of this interaction is appropriate, like asking questions, getting directions, hey, saying thank you for your service, that's something we usually like, or most officers like it. In any case, though, it does interfere with an officer doing their paperwork, and it is a bit hard to concentrate on your report where people are asking you lots of questions. Or for that person who wants to come up and tell you about how they were arrested for doing something they didn't do, that's a little bit inconvenient for when you're trying to write your report. So that's another consideration. Officers like to keep an eye on their surroundings. It is not unknown for an evil-minded person to try to sneak up on an officer and inflict some sort of bodily harm on society's protector. Hey, I know, I've been shot at by bad guys. Now, some members of the public may bear less ill will than that toward law enforcement, but they still want to demonstrate their dissatisfaction. Now, these feelings can manifest themselves as vandalism to law enforcement vehicles, spray paint on the side of a car. So the officers also not only need to keep an eye open for what's going on around them, but they need to keep an eye out for their own vehicles to make sure something's not going wrong with it. And there have been criminals known to break into patrol vehicles out in public so they can steal some of the equipment that's inside. So it's for these reasons officers like to have a clear view of their vehicles when they're not in them. What about riding in the office? Okay, well, that's appropriate for some places, if it's close enough to your beat. Now, I once had a beat that was over 20 miles away from the local office, so driving all the way back to my office would not have been very appropriate because it'd be hard for me to respond back out to my beat if something happened or to keep an eye on the beat as the shift was going on. So staying away from the office or going back to the office may not be practical for a lot of officers. And there's another thing about staying away from the officers. You might want to stay away from the brass. Not that the brass is bad, but you never know. If you show up in the office and you're just sitting there doing some work, they might come up and volunteer you for a special project just because you were handy. And so, offices aren't also really built for rapid deployment out there on the road. So that's something else you have to keep in mind. So what's left? Convenience stores? No, they seldom have places to sit down. Libraries? Oh, I love libraries. Hey, my name is even on a library building. But you think about this, though. If you have the radio's playing in a library, the stereotypical image of a librarian is someone going, shh. So no, that wouldn't work. So, well, okay. What about donut shops? They have chairs, they have tables, and they have lighting. And the public is seldom in there long enough purchasing whatever it is they're going to get to engage in long conversations with the officers. So that, that helps, when you're trying to write. And there's usually parking places right in front of where the officer might be sitting. So that way the officer can keep, an eye out on their vehicles. And there's also lots of windows. So usually an officer can keep, an eye out for the entire area just in case there might be something going on in the surrounding territory. And people are in there for, such a short time that, listening to the radio, officer's radio wouldn't really be much of a problem for you. And also, as my daughter Sarah used to say, they're open 24/7, which means, they're always out there and they're almost always open, whether it be day or night. And you knew it was coming. They have donuts. Now, if you've seen my picture here on these pages, or you can look right now, you will know that I've had 1 or 2 or 6 or 8 donuts in my lifetime. And there's no getting away from the fact that some officers are addicted to these delectable gut bombs, as one of my physical training instructors at the CHP Academy called them. Now, in all honesty, I've never eaten a donut while in public in uniform because I just never thought it looked good. Now, donut shops also offer coffee, and many more officers, if they're going to eat or drink something, when they go to a donut shop, they're going for the coffee. Now, a lot of people drink coffee, and in reality, that's what most officers, if they're eating or drinking something, are in a donut shop for. And this is especially true in the early morning or the late night shifts. So, let's add it all up. Convenience, accessibility, low public contact, an occasional snack nearby explains why so many officers can be found at donut shops. And it all leads up to my favorite bumper sticker, bad cop, no donut. Thanks for watching. I'm Phil Constantine, retired California Highway Patrol officer, and just a reminder, the CHP does not necessarily endorse this video. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please feel free to make comments below as long as the language is family friendly. And if you like this video, please click on the thumbs up button below. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the circle with my picture in it in the lower right hand corner of the video. The arrow is pointing at it now. And once you have subscribed, you can be notified of when I have a new video posted by clicking on the bell icon in the description field below the video. Thanks again for watching.